Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, we're going to go over a video that was requested. It's a little bit on the negative side, but I responded to that comment and said that I would look into the research. And if I found anything that was specific or fit the criteria, I would make a video on it. So, we're actually talking about things that women find unattractive in men. And so, this can help you to understand, is there something that you want to adjust so that you can attract more women? If you want to understand the psychology of how this works, this is just an informational video. I like to be as honest as possible in my videos, but I understand that it can be a little upsetting for some people. So the research is going to be in the description box. Again, as I always tell y'all, likely some of the research will not be accessible to everybody. I'm a student in my doctorate program, so I'm a PhD student. And so I have access to some of these things, but I'm still going to summarize the research so that you guys kind of know what I'm seeing. And so the very first one I think is pretty common. A lot of people know it, but it is one of the most common researched areas. It is something that makes men unattractive to women. So a trait that a man can have that is unattractive is that he has weak upper body strength, and also the way it was worded in the research is high waist to chest ratio. So we see that a woman is more likely to rate a man with a broader chest. So a lower waist to chest ratio, that's what it said. I don't know if that's the right word. Basically, it signifies higher upper body strength as more attractive. And so by contrast, men who have bodies where it's, oh gosh, I don't even know how to describe it, more this shaped as comparison to this shaped. Hold up, inverted triangle versus triangle, something of that sort. Whereas where the shoulders are more narrow, that can be seen as unattractive, okay? And this research was done in 2017. There are plenty of research. There's a lot of research on this one, but this one actually showed why it is from a biological and psychological perspective. It shows typically it signifies upper body strength. How true that is, I don't know, but that's where it comes from. And from a psychological standpoint, having stronger upper body strength signifies that he will likely be more able to take care of her and the family that they may have. Does that make sense? The next one is research done in 2024. I think this is for both genders, but this research was more specific. That's unattractive for men to have this trait, is actually hostility towards the opposite sex, or a very authoritative belief combined with a perception of feeling like maybe he's superior to her to some extent, okay? So basically there's a relationship between self-perceived attractiveness and then hostility. So if he finds himself to be attractive, maybe to a point where he might hurt her, or he might feel like he's more superior to her, this can actually create behaviors to which she feels uncomfortable and she might feel unsafe. So that's a psychological perspective. There is a part in this research that is a little bit off topic, but I feel like it might be helpful to share. I don't know. I don't even know my comments on this. There's research that this research, that perceive themselves either very attractive or very unattractive, more commonly unattractive, they tend to be more hostile to women. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's an interesting characteristic. And so that suggests, this study mentioned, it suggests that men who perceive themselves as less attractive have negative attitudes, which further reduce their attractiveness towards women. I don't know, but that is an interesting possibility. However, in general, hostility for most people, men, women, whatever it may be, if you're a man and you're hostile, or if you're a woman, you're hostile, it's very likely that's pretty unattractive, just because it shows a lot of dysregulation, but it also shows a need for control. And a lot of people want to be themselves and appreciate for who they are. So that's how I took it. Let me know your thoughts. The next one is research done in 2023. I found this interesting, okay? Men who tend to be more risk-taking, or I guess thrill-seeking, they actually seem to be less desirable for women in long-term relationships. And it does actually show correlation that women tend to choose men over time for long-term relationships as somebody who actually is able to not take such risk-seeking and are able to evaluate their life from a decision-making standpoint rather than excitement. That's actually very interesting. The next one I feel like a lot of you guys know, or a lot of you guys are aware that there's a possibility about this. Men with lower economic status, social status can actually appear to have lower long-term mating orientation in comparison to their higher social status and economic status counterparts, okay? So from that perspective, we can kind of assume, stretching the research, both research, 2023 and there's another one in 2022, we can imagine that there's a reason that this is occurring, right? Men who have higher social status and economic status tend to have a higher potential for mating and more longer term relationships in comparison to their lower economic status and social status counterparts. So we can imagine that there actually is a disadvantage for men to be in this situation based on connection, intimate relationships, mating, etc., based on research, okay? The next one is lower reliability. So somebody who's not very dependable. So this research is very interesting. So from an early age, we tend to understand what is perceived as honest, kindness, or dependable character. And the original perspective of how we perceive attractiveness starts from very young, even though it's not fully developed. And so research does so adolescents when they actually perceive a potential partner, as also when they become an adult, right? From the very start in their adolescent years, they already see that low reliability, both genders, they find this very unattractive. And this is for people who are looking into, at one point, having a relationship, saying that they want to get married someday. They are perceiving that one of the most unattractive traits for men and women, actually, is somebody who's not dependable. That's really interesting, okay? The next one is a man who struggles with regulating his emotions. This was cited in research 2015. I'm sorry about that. This is very interesting, okay? So the research was done that the influence of a person, a man's ability to regulate his emotions actually affects how desirable he is to the opposite sex. And so if a man is physically desirable, but he is somebody who struggles with regulating his emotions, he is automatically, from this research, perceived as less attractive simply because he's unable to regulate his emotions. And we see it in the flip side too. My understanding of this, and this is not part of the research, however, it was in another research earlier, I think the one in 2023, if I'm not mistaken, the first or second one I mentioned, we can see that stability can be perceived as safe for women to be in a long-term relationship. And my assumption based on that, and you guys can look at the research if it's accessible, I wonder if difficulty regulating emotions does possibly subconsciously make a lot of people believe this person might not be healthy, might not be safe, might not be good to have a family with. So I wonder if that's why it's perceived as unattractive. So that's something that I wanted to look into because somebody requested it. I hope this video was helpful to somebody. The research is in the description box. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.